Hello, this is Chris Heasley with the Chris Heasley Radio Show. Alexander Hamilton is an American war hero, yet he was mistrusted, despised, and even hated by his fellow American founders. To give you an idea of this man's war heroics, it was the Battle of Trenton, the crossing of the Delaware, where General Washington commanded his forces on a cold, icy Christmas morning in 1776 to cross that frozen river, the Delaware River, an act alone that requires an immense amount of bravery. The men cross it and they come to a Hessian outpost that is guarding the Hessian fort in Trenton, New Jersey. To give you an idea of the threat the Hessians posed to the American forces, they were the most highly trained mercenary forces in the world. The British paid good money to hire those Hessians to send them across the Atlantic to finish off our American forces, and they knew how to fight. So General Washington comes to the Hessian outpost guarding the greater Hessian military, and he orders Alexander Hamilton to take a squad of less than 5 men and to not fire a shot and to take out the Hessian outpost. So I want you to think about this. Alexander Hamilton is ordered to go up against the world's toughest fighters in a hand-to-hand battle, in a knife fight, and he cannot fire his weapons. Who wants to take that order? Nobody. Alexander Hamilton accepted the order. He took his men and followed General Washington's order, finishing off the Hessian outpost and all fighters in it. This led to the surprise attack on the greater Hessian military and the ending of the Hessian forces on the American continent. And again, I want to repeat this. The Hessians were completely eliminated from the battlefield. They were no longer a factor in the War of 1776. So think about that blow that served to the British forces. How much of an investment did they have in the Hessian military? Think about their greater plans they had for that Hessian unit. Were the Hessians expected to be the last nail in the coffin for the Patriot Army? You bet they were. When King George got word that the Hessians were taken out due to the actions of Alexander Hamilton, that led to many sleepless nights. That act led to a victory in the Revolutionary War, and we all owe a debt of gratitude to Alexander Hamilton. Then the question is, why did the Americans grow to hate and despise Alexander Hamilton? I want to remind everybody that Thomas Jefferson hated Alexander Hamilton, and Aaron Burr ended up killing Alexander Hamilton in a duel. And there was no love lost by the American founders when Hamilton was killed off. So the question is why? The question is, was Alexander Hamilton corrupted somewhere along the way? Did he eventually become compromised? Because once victory was secured, Alexander Hamilton made it his driving mission to create a central bank in the American Republic, and he wanted almost no debate on it. It was as if he was driving a round peg through a square hole, a rushed decision. He wanted that bank, and that bank would eventually be created. And that would be the first bank of the United States. The reason the founders had suspicions and hesitation is because of what had happened just about a decade before, which was a fight over the control of currencies in the early American colonies. So again, we're going to jump back to before 1776 to the early to mid 1700s. And at that time, the colonies were booming. Before the Revolutionary War, the colonies were booming. They were wealthy. They were abundant. They were blossoming. And what had happened is word of the abundance of the colony. And by the way, when I say colonies, I mean the American colony. The American colony was the wealthiest colony of all of England's colonies, even more so than England itself. The state of living of the American early colony was greater than any other colony. And when word of this got back to King George, A tinge of jealousy struck him to his core. And what he did was he invited Benjamin Franklin to come to his office and explain what was the reason for the American colony's success. And Benjamin Franklin made it very clear. He said, it's very simple. It's because we have a dependable currency. We have a currency that we print in direct proportion to the size of the population of our economy and the size of the economy of this American colony. And we don't overprint it and we don't underprint it. And no matter how much political pressure is put on us, we keep just the perfect number of currency in place in the American colony. And so what had happened then is once King George found out about this, he began to issue directives to disrupt this method of success in the American colonies. And what he passed was the Currency Act of 1764. And what the Currency Act of 1764 did was it required the American colony to begin backing its currency with gold. And we are told that backing a currency with a precious metal is something that's necessary, and that is a bigger debate, and it's a worthy point. But you see, the issue in the American colony was there was no gold. Before King George issued that directive, someone had gone in and bought up all of the gold. And the question is, who was it? And the question is, was it the Rothschild banking cartel? The Rothschild banking cartel that has always made its driving mission that in one deceptive way or another to get control of the currencies. We do not know the answer to this question. We only know that there seems to be a repetitive historical trend in that area. And we know that when the Currency Act of 1764 went into place, that the wealth of the American colony went downward. And what happened is it went from wealth to poverty. And this largely was the reason that the Americans were ready to go up against the world's mightiest army in the War of 1776. And the greater question is, was it the Rothschild banking cartel that somehow got control of Alexander Hamilton? Again, we don't know. These are just suspicions because we cannot understand the marked change in Alexander Hamilton's thinking, where at one point in time, he's fighting his heart out for the greater good of the American people. And then in a marked decision, he begins to fight for control over the currency. And you see, what had happened is we see the Currency Act of 1764, where there's a fight over currencies. We see the creation of the First Bank of America, which has in its mission to get control of the currency. We see the Second Bank of America created. Once the term of the first bank was ended, immediately a second bank was created with the prime directive of getting control of the currencies. We see President Lincoln issuing the Greenbacks Act, and ultimately, shortly thereafter, he was assassinated. We see this trend over and over again. And the question is, in 1911, did the criminal class, did the banking cartels perfect their form of deception? Because in 1911, what they did with Senator Nelson Aldrich, a questionable man, and President Woodrow Wilson, a very questionable president, they created the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve is not federal, and there are no reserves. But what the Federal Reserve is, it's a bank. That's all it is. It's just like the First Bank of America and the Second Bank of America. They just perfected their terminology, removed the word bank, called it a much more interesting term, the Federal Reserve, and they created a national bank. But you see, here's how they perfected the art of controlling currency. They not only eventually got control over all of the currency, where they can either overprint it or underprint it, and thereby dictate the health of the economy, dictate whether we are booming or busting, having control largely over our economic livelihoods. But they also did something even more sinister. And what they did was they created a currency note that is a debt note. It's a debt-based currency system, okay? So every time that, and by the way, exchange is a necessity of life. exchange, just like breathing, is a necessity of life. When a man is born, he will eventually have to do exchange. It is a necessity of life. And so the banking class knows this. And so what they say is, for you to do this necessity of life, you have to go in debt to the banking cartel. It is the most lethal form of enslavement that exists. And so what they did is they created this debt-based currency system. So with every dollar issued, you go into debt. There is no reason that it needs to be this way, but that's how they did it. And then they initiated the Leviathan, the monstrosity that would become the American government. This multi-trillion-dollar venture that can never be contained, that grows continuously, and we can never get our hands around. And they did it with a specific purpose, that they would then have to print more and more debt notes, placing you in further enslavement. Nobody wants this monstrosity of a government. Nobody asked for it. The criminal class and the political class has been paid off and bought off by the banking class. And then they initiate this form of enslavement where this government grows and grows and grows, and you are enslaved. And it's always the same message. You did it. It's your government. You took on this debt. You are irresponsible. All the while, the criminal class is getting richer and richer. And so we are in amazing times right now, because what we are going through right now is a method of exposure, where we are seeing precisely how deep and dark our federal government has become, where we are seeing these USAID investments in far off places, in areas that are highly inappropriate, where we are seeing the corruption in one form or another. We're seeing it taken down. We're seeing the beast taken down slice by slice. And we are in truly magnificent times, because ultimately what we are in the midst of is we're in the midst of this Leviathan going away, something that was inconceivable. We're in the midst of, piece by piece, the foundations the corrupt foundations that were put in place by the criminal class to keep this monster in place, to keep the Federal Reserve in place. We are seeing them moved. We're seeing them removed piece by piece. Each part of the foundation is being removed, so that within 24 or 36 months, we can potentially say, why do we even need the Federal Reserve any longer? And when that happens, it will be a day of celebration. So I really believe that we are in incredible times. And this is the Chris Heasley Show. And on this show, we will bring you all the ideas, the content, the information that you need to take back your city, your country, your state, the great state of Texas, and our world. But there is an obligation that comes with the show, and the obligation is on you to get involved at the local level, because at the local level is where change actually happens. Today, I presented an issue on a national level, but it is at the local level where we can actually fight this battle, because at the local level, we can elect representatives that communicate the same message like the one you heard today, and we can expose this beast. We can expose this Leviathan. And like Samuel Adams says, we set 1,000 brush fires for liberty across the country. We can set those brush fires for liberty and take out these monstrosities, these Leviathan-type organizations, piece by piece at their foundational level, and win this battle and let peace prevail. And with that being said, we have a very interesting show today. And on today's show, we have two guests. And the first one is Dan Mathews. And Dan and I have we've become to know each other through our work in the activist freedom movement in Fort Bend County. And Dan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Chris. Good show.
Good. And we also have with us James Clayton of Katy Area Conservatives, and it's your first time on our show.
Yes, sir.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much.
Good. Well, I had a lot to say there. James, tell me, do you have any feedback on what I said? Did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? Tell me what your thoughts are.
I think you got it right. I think, the thing about it is, the things you talked about happened a long time ago. We are, people they get stuck in their routine. They're going through the motions. They're paying their bills. These are big ideas that you're talking about. They're important ideas, and that's kind of the thing. People need to stop and investigate and take a little time to understand these things. And I think that's the dilemma people have. It's not that it's not important. It's just the time to expend to understand it. And that's what people need to do.
Yeah, and I think that in order to understand the present, you have to go back to the foundations of when these things got in place. I'm presenting arguments from over 200 years ago.
Right.
And people just assume that that's so far out of reach, but absolutely the foundations of this criminal enterprise are more than a century old. And I think that we're in an amazing time of exposing it.
Totally.
I think so.
Yeah. The thing you talked about was the trillions of dollars, and the numbers are just, it's hard to even comprehend how big the numbers are. But you have to attack it at some point. And I think that's what Trump is doing, and I think we're blessed to have him working on him and Elon Musk right now.
Yeah, and I think a lot of stuff's going to be coming back to the States. I want to talk about that in just a minute. But what do you think, Dan? Did I get it right, or do you have any opinion?
Well, you are absolutely right, because fundamentals are always fundamentals. You can't change it. And we do have good fundamentals. The problem right now is we're not keeping that. No matter whether it's the Federal Reserve or the federal government or state government, including this in the local level, we have people do not know what they're doing. They have no clue. For instance, you know what? Printing money is something like printing newspaper these days, especially on the last administration. That's why it created all the inflation is. So it's very critical that we look at how the country is built. Our fundamental principle is very core, and that's what we need to. Plus, people like, the listeners, they need to get involved with finding good representatives from the local level all the way to the state and federal level. Common sense people understand what is the consequence of this kind of reckless act. Yep. So you are absolutely right. I agree with you.
Yep, yep. James, tell me about yourself. It's your first time on the show. Tell me a little bit about where you're from, what got you involved from a politically active point of view.
So native Texan, lived in the Houston area pretty much all my life. Moved here as a little kid. Graduated from A&M, worked in the oil industry. Raised 4 kids, been conservative all my life. Paid attention to politics, but never really had the time to invest in it. Busy raising kids and going to work. My kids got graduated and moved on. And when I reached around 50, I decided to get involved. So I had more time on my hands. So I reached out. Actually, how I started was I looked it up online. I found my precinct chair. I didn't know much about politics at the time. Introduced myself to my precinct chair, and he was, I come to find out precinct chairs are always looking for help. So went out on a block walk with him, with his daughter. It was my first experience, and it was interesting. And so I told him, I said, hey, I'd like to get more involved. So what happened next was we were going into primary season. So he asked me, hey, do you want to be my AJ, my assistant judge? I said, sure, I'll go do that. So I'd never done anything in politics, so I decided to do that. A couple months after that, he decides to move, and he's like, hey, James, you want to be the precinct chair? I'm like, okay, sure. Decided to do that. And basically what happened was it was just a series of me saying, yes, I'll go ahead and do that. And I continued to get involved. And what I come to find out was, through knocking on doors, block walking, is people aren't as engaged as they can and they should be. And so what I wanted to do was provide an opportunity for that. So in addition to the one rail of getting involved on the political scene within the Harris County Republican Party, I'm a Senate District chair. I also started a group where people could get involved and just kind of understand what's going on. So we started on my back porch with 3 people and met monthly. And that thing blossomed. And now on a monthly basis, we get together. I'll have 40 to 60 people. We meet at a clubhouse. I'll put out food, and we do like about an hour where people kind of interact and such, and I'll bring in speakers. It's topical, or we bring in representatives, people running for office. But really, it's just an opportunity. The 2 hours, the first hour is for people to get to know each other, and then the second hour is for us to understand the issues, and that's kind of my passion.
And what are the driving issues right now with Katy area conservatives?
So to me, there's 2. The first, and obviously, what's going on in Washington, D.C. is important. I think everyone needs to pay attention to that. That's kind of something that we all need to do. But if I think about it locally, sure, what's going on in Austin's important. The recent House Speaker race did not turn out the way that we wanted it to for conservatives. So there's that. And so I think paying attention to what is going on legislation-wise over the next coming months, we need to pay attention to that. And then also school board elections. So we have a school board race coming up here in a couple of months for Katy ISD, and two seats are going to be elected. And one of the candidates that are running, one of the incumbents, is a good friend of mine, and so I'm hoping to help him get elected.
Good. So what I see happening at the federal level, again, is truly amazing. And the point I was trying to make in my opening monologue is that I believe that this Leviathan, this obese government that we have, isn't just a series of happenstance. It's not, because we're always presented that. All of this, we're sort of enslaved just out of act of incompetence and buffoonery by our political class. It is not that. They are slick mobsters. They are the criminal class. And the argument I was trying to make is that this process has been a battle since the time of the early 1700s in America, and now we have this massive government that can never be paid for. We have this bank that just issues these notes of debt, and we're just enslaved in perpetuity. It's the most lethal form of enslavement. It's the perfection of the art of deception, and I think it's evil genius. But with that being said, how I see things happening at the federal level right now is truly amazing. I believe that we're in the most amazing times since the time of Christ. And what I mean by that is that what we have President Trump slashing, burning, and exposing this Leviathan at the federal level. And what I believe he's going to do is reduce it down to just a pinprick size, to just the essential services, maintaining the necessary social services, like, for example, Social Security and things of that sort, but making the government actually financially viable. And I think at the same time, what he's going to do is redistribute other necessary services at the state level. And I think that you're going to see all the opportunists in place ready to corrupt the systems at the state level. But at the same time, the Patriots have had a massive showing at the state level, and we're very, very formidable at this point. So with that being said, I mean, tell me what you guys see. Do you guys see it that same way? Do you see this sort of redistribution of services, of powers from the central level to a more diversified state level?
Well, I mean, you are absolutely right, Chris, because what we are seeing for the last 1 month, and even on the first Trump administration, we heard about the swamp, the deep state, but did not really expose too much at that time. Now he has more control or more power in a sense. That means the people of America given him the power. So the power still dwells among the people, the citizens. They have the power given to President Trump and his administration to go and expose all these things. If you look at it in the scripture, you say Jesus went to the temple and saw people were doing money exchange and all kind of commercials and all that, and he just took them out. So similar to that, we are seeing the unprecedented corruption in the federal level mainly. We start seeing it and people start talking about it, and there are smart people like Elon Musk and others are exposing those things, and we will see, continue to see. It's just only a month now. So again, the conservatives were not happy for all this time. Now they are more happy and they are getting engaged. So it is our time to get involved with this and understand it, and also talk about it, resonate this message and say, hey, look, America will go down to the drain if we don't do a drastic change. And President Trump is that person. So he is doing all he can, and it is our responsibility to get engaged with it and support that.
Yeah. Well, just to give you an idea to the extent of the corruption at the federal level, I have these numbers here of the wealth of the net wealth of certain political national figures.
Yep.
And I think they make a salary of around $200,000, but you have Ilhan Omar with an $8.3 million net worth, Chuck Schumer with a $75 million net worth, Elizabeth Warren with, I don't know if it's 7.3 or 73 million. It's considerable. Adam Schiff with over $8 million in net worth, Jamie Raskin with 20 million in net worth, Hakeem Jeffries with 1.7 million, Jasmine Crockett with I think it's 10 million. So, I mean, these people are just insanely rich. And at the same time, what they're doing now is they're attempting to make the argument that by auditing these federal agencies, that Trump is violating the rights of every American. Is there any legitimacy to that argument?
Not at all. No, I mean, in my case, what I'm saying is we should, every one of the elected officials, audit them yearly. Find out what their net worth to begin with and where they get that wealth. I mean, someone just make $175,000 in a yearly basis and getting $95 million. I mean, that is 95 is what is announced or what recorded it. How much more they have in overseas. I keep hearing people and politicians here in Fort Bend level having business in overseas and millions of dollars worth of assets and investments. COVID gave them a blank check for a lot of these politicians in the county, state, and federal level to get rich quick. So that's what like I said earlier, the grassroots people need to get involved with it and understand it. And if they don't like what they're seeing it, they have the power to just remove, period.
So, James, are you having sleepless nights knowing that that the federal agencies are being audited? And, I mean, do you think it's completely offensive that when Dan says that Maxine Waters should be audited? Isn't that really offensive to suggest such a thing?
It's not offensive at all. It is awesome what's going on. It is awesome. Getting rid of the waste. I saw an article the other day. It was a someone that was, I guess, I think it was in the I can't remember the agency, but they were complaining about the fact that they were getting removed from their job, and the lady that was complaining about it, they kind of looked at her feed, and so she had posted, I think, a few months earlier about how, she had spent the day in her jammies, and she's working from home, and how easygoing her job was, and then a couple months later, she's losing her job because they're trying to make cutbacks. I think there's way too much comfort. So these people have gotten very comfortable at taking their money, and so I think putting a little stress on that's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, I think there's another issue that's rising to the surface, and it is a true threat to the Democrat Party across the country, in the state of Texas, in the state of Ohio, across the country. And I kind of understand why Dustin Burrows got elected as Speaker House, and this is an area of topic that is controversial amongst even people that agree with us, amongst even conservative Americans, patriots. It's a real contentious issue, and it's the issue of school choice. And what's happened is that school choice it's going to pass in the state of Texas. I'm almost certain of it. I mean, again, you can never count out the Texas deep state. They are formidable like no one's business. But Greg Abbott has done so much, and essentially what happened is they put forth a school choice bill a year ago, and I agree with the bill. From everything I've read, I agree with the bill because they tweaked it and tweaked it and tweaked it. And the greatest argument comes from the homeschoolers. And their argument is that they don't want this bill because they don't want funding to be tied to curriculum. So that now, if you're going to get the funding, you have to follow the drumbeat of the federal or the state government, so that they can begin. And I understand that. But this thing has been hashed out to such an extent, and I keep asking them to show me where it says that is an issue, because I don't believe it is. And if I'm wrong, please let me know. But I don't see anywhere in that bill where the state government can begin dictating course materials. So that's my first question. I mean, again, I'm still open to the debate, but the thing about this school choice bill is that when it was presented, first of all, what's our state rep? I can't think of his name now. Goodness gracious! But one of the state reps that I really respect supported it. No, a state senator the guy who's an accountant, and I apologize, I can't remember his
Paul
name.
Betancourt.
Paul Betancourt. Yeah. I mean, he's a champion for this thing, and I find that guy to be hugely credible.
Right.
And the way I understand it is that this school choice bill, if it passes, it's going to be the format for the whole country. That's why they cannot allow it to pass in the state of Texas. Now, when school choice passes, it is a serious problem for the teacher unions. And the teacher unions are the most leftist, I would even say Marxist organizations in the country. It's like no matter how much amount of reason or just debate you want to bring to them, they're always a hard no. They want more big government. They just seem to be completely infiltrated with the commie left. And so when this happens, school choice, it pulls their entire foundations out from underneath them, because the teachers unions exist on these required teacher union dues, which don't exist in the state of Texas, but they do across the country in other states. And so should this school choice bill happen in Texas, it's going to be so momentous across the country, which is one of the reasons why I believe Dustin Burrows got elected Speaker of the House. The deep state, the Texas deep state, cannot allow school choice to happen, because if it does, the Texas deep state is largely done. But just to give you an idea, in Ohio, there's also sort of a revolution happening where in the state of Ohio, at the state level, there is a lot of Ron Paul type of 1776 sort of oriented state reps that are running and winning across the state. And so what it appears to me that happened in the state of Ohio is this teacher unions, which are really formidable in the state of Ohio, much more than in Texas, they started to pull their funding from Democrats and shift it over to Republicans. And all of a sudden you hear these hardliner Republicans start saying, well, we're interested in school choice, but then they start introducing caveats. But, we don't want to hurt the integrity of the schools and things of that sort. So what does that mean? It means the funding's starting to slip over from left to right. The school unions are getting their claws into these Republicans, and it's a political movement. The people of Ohio want school choice. I'd like to point out, just on a personal matter, for me, I was always wondering if school choice would allow, because it's going to be, I believe, about $8,000 per family in Texas. And then my question is, can you allow it to go to private school tuition? Because we have a lot of good private schools in Houston, in Fort Bend, and from what I understand, these private schools will accept that money, and it will be transferable to private schools. So any parents that have their schools in private schools, have their kids in private schools, will be able to spend this, bring down their tuition, and some of that tuition is very expensive. But that's how I see school choice. I see it as a necessary good. I think it's completely wrong that you can pigeonhole these kids into a certain school. You pigeonhole them in the school, regardless of the crime in the neighborhood, regardless of the quality of teaching, regardless of if they are this leftist, hypersexualized agenda being pushed on them. And these kids, simply because of the geography that they live in, they are forced to go into these conditions. And I see that largely going away and freedom happening. What do you guys think? Am I wrong? I mean, again, I'm open because I see so much debate on this issue, but tell me what you think.
I definitely think, I think you're right. The one thing I will say about the school choice, giving people a say on where their tax dollars go is a good thing, and so and in general terms, in that mechanism, I think it's a good thing. The one thing that I think gets lost a little bit is sometimes the school choice at the local level can be a little bit of a red herring, and I think you have to be careful with that. It's true. So, like I was saying a second ago, people get on with their lives. They're worried about paying their bills. And this is true with teachers. So teachers, so when you talk about pulling dollars from funding, that's hitting close to home for teachers. And so I can understand that. And then with the teachers unions lean left. And so there's a bias there. So anytime you might have a conservative board member that ties himself with the Republican Party or with conservative politics, of course, conservative politics, Republican politics, for school choice. So there's a bit of a pull there. So you have the teachers that maybe they're a little bit leery of a board member that might be tied in with a Republican politics or conservative politician because there's that fear around school dollars. But the thing to remember is school board members don't set that policy. That's set in Austin. And so that can be used as a bit of a scare tactic in these school board races. I don't know if that makes sense.
Absolutely, it makes sense, yeah. This is an issue that has nothing to do with local school board races. It's a matter decided at the state. That's why I prefaced my arguments with this is happening with the Texas State House and with Governor Greg Abbott, okay? So this is a statewide level issue, and anyone who either for or against it needs to direct their energies at the state level.
Yeah,
Dan, what do you
100%.
think?
Yeah, I mean, you are right. What we need is a conservative majority choice for school choice. That's what I call, because what conservatives want, that's what we need to. So majority of Texas wants that school choice, conservative choice. So if we go against that, that means look at our state house now. We don't have, the conservatives do not have the majority there. What they have is a watered down Republicans with the Democrats. So there is a school choice bill passed in the Senate now, but who knows that how that's going to come up out from the House, because they're not going to look at the conservative choice as is proposed. They're going to change it. So what I'm supporting is the conservative majority choice of school choice. That's what more important. That means the bill that at the state House should be passed as it is, but we need to look at what changes they're going to do. But Destin Borough, I don't think he's a conservative, and along with another 30 plus state representative, they go with the Democrat choice. So they changed it. We will see it, because 2 years ago we saw that the same battle there. It never happened, or it never passed. So we have to look and see how things are coming out in the state. But again, conservatives has the choice, and they should pass according to what they wanted.
So at the local level, I believe that you're involved in the races for the Katy ISD School Board. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. A little bit engaged, absolutely.
Could you give us a state of affairs that's what's going on there?
So there's 2 seats up. Victor Perez is board president right now. So mostly what you can look at is some of the conservative votes on the board have been 4-3. And Victor's, so we have what I would classify as a conservative majority. The other seat that's up is someone who is part of that 3. So you have 1 seat. Victor's is in that 4. The other seat is in the 3. And so if Victor were to lose that seat, who knows? Who knows? I mean, is the board going to shift away? Some of the policies that Victor's put in, he's done a really good job. And it's not just about some of the hot button issues. I think we had talked earlier that since he's been board president, there's been 11% increase in the salaries for teachers, and that's significant. And
Do they know that?
I guess. I hope so. Maybe I think they need to know that. I think he's trying to get the word out on that. If you look at Victor, and if
I might say,
yeah.
Victor is a former CFO, correct?
Exactly.
So when he came on our show, we had a guest caller named G2, and G2 peppered him with every question about the finances of that school. And you can go watch the episode, but Victor was able to answer with a solution in every way, shape, and form. I really believe that he's bringing a dollars and cents perspective to these schools. And I think that probably the reason that the school administration the teachers are getting a better income is because he's running the school with greater efficiencies. Everybody assumes that when you introduce efficiencies to an enterprise, the salaries go down. I don't know where this idea came. When you introduce efficiencies to an enterprise, salaries go up. So that's how I see. That's how I translate it. But I don't know if you can talk more about his work on the school board.
Well, let me finish that thought. So as far as the financial, he spent years in the business world, and so he's using that acumen to help Katy ISD. So I think that there's definitely benefit there. So I think there's benefit to keeping him on the board for that, but not even just for that reason. the conservative lean right now that we have on the board. We've had issues that he's been willing to face head on. So the trans issue that came up. So that's one of the things. So that was a 4-3 vote a while back. Okay. And so what was that all about? That vote had to do with parents. So it was basically, if a child wanted to be identified by a different gender, we're going to let the parents know. Okay. That was a 4-3 vote. Okay. If you pull Victor off, who knows how that's going? Are we going to change? Are we going back to the old policy and hide these things from parents? Who knows? I don't know. So there's that, and then there's the other hot button issue is the libraries. Getting the libraries clean. So he's worked on that process. There's a process in place to keep bad books out of the library. However you want to classify bad books. Some books are just plain out bad that everyone should agree to that. The thing about it is, it's not an issue that you can say we're done and it's settled. That's something that is ongoing. It's not something that's going to go away. So you can't sit there and say, are we done with the books? No, it's something. And so I think that's something he has a passion about, and that's protecting our kids. So we want somebody who's willing to do that, who's willing to face issues head on. So
wasn't it a federal or statewide issue where the state was issuing a directive where if that the schools had to be compliant with any of the sexual agenda was put on the children, that the parents, generally speaking, would be informed by the school. And Katy ISD, with Victor's support, proactively implemented this measure to be in compliance with the state level directives, where they would proactively notify parents if a student questioned their sexuality. The parents would know immediately. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
And it was 4-3, and so 4-3. So 4 voted for the policy to inform the parents.
Correct.
3 voted against it.
That's correct.
Who were the 3 that voted against it?
Not Victor. I'm not. People can go research that. It's 3 current incumbents.
Were they all Democrats, or were they all that? What would you consider them on the left?
Let's just say that, in my opinion, it was. I don't know if it's necessarily a left-right issue at that point. I think it's more of a, we don't want to talk about it, right? I think that's what the vote. To me, that's how the vote came down. It was, do we want to address it, or do we want to sweep it under the rug? And I think the 4-3 vote came down to four board members, Victor being one of those, basically wanted to face it head on. The others were not willing to challenge it.
And I think that, yeah, I remember some of those members coming out and saying that if parents were told about the sexuality of their children, that the parent may murder the child. Do you remember that argument made by a board member?
That I don't remember, no.
I'm just trying to say, like, how can a person represent a constituency if they think that their constituents are that out of bounds that they would actually take an act of violence against their own child to that extent? Isn't that sort of absurdity on its face? I don't know. I really, when I heard that comment, I know I was really taken back. And I feel like at our schools, there's this sort of anti-parent agenda, and I feel like it's largely, 4-3 vote, I think it's largely entrenched in the Katy ISD schools at this point.
Well, I want to be careful about that. Mm-hmm. So here's the thing. I do substitute teach in the district, so I'm engaged in the district, and there's fantastic teachers in the district. So I don't want to slight any of the teachers in the district. They do a good job.
There's not a single statement against the teachers.
We're blessed with the teachers in our district. So let's let that. So, but that goes back to the dynamics that I was talking about earlier. When we talk about the school choice and challenging teachers, so we're not challenging teachers. So there's a balance that has to happen. We want to support our teachers, but we also want to protect the kids, and I think Victor wants to do that. That's what I've seen from Victor, and so that's why I'm supportive of continuing him on the board.
Absolutely, we love our teachers, and any critique that I may have brought up is directed at the board members, the political operatives that are running these school boards, and I don't know how you can bring in a message like that and legitimately represent the parents. What is your opinion of the leftist agenda at the school board level?
Well, it's very known that left wants to take America, and especially our young generation. We are creating a society which building up children, schools, and students, they don't have their own identity. Who is the first person in control of their life? Their parents, right? So the parents should have the total control on their children. And they need to know that what they are doing, the school is doing. It's not the school is building up a person, a child. The family is the one. The school is only supporting that. So America is a society now, the children, the youths, especially the new generation, don't have their own identity. I like what President Trump said. There's only two gender in America. That's the fundamental, right? I mean, a child is born. You don't call that, what is this? It's a it or that? No, it's a he or she. So we have to stand on the side of the truth. Conservative sides tend to be what is right in my mind, that protect their identity, protect their gender, and keep it, and let the parents has the control. And whether that's in the school choice or whether that is in the school board, especially what we are talking about, the gender transition, they're the one need to make decision. So we need conservative representatives in the school board, like you said, Victor Perez and others, stand with the parents and give them the support. And there are many of them goes with the liberal agenda. Liberal agenda is not good for America, period. We already seen that. And just take the last 4 years. The liberal agenda almost destroyed America. Take that as a benchmark. If we continue on that path, liberal agenda, which the mastermind of that is Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and their, gangsters, took America 100 years behind. And our generation went at least one generation behind. That cannot control anymore. It should be continue that anymore. So if a person is a conservative, stand on that. If they go and collude with the liberals, like what they're doing in the state, you have to identify who they are and take them out. That's, like I said earlier, the people of America, the citizens has the control. They need to identify. They need to get more involved with school board, city, state, and county. That's the only way we can get our conservative agenda established in our state in Texas.
There's one other point I want to make sure that gets made. When we talk about these elections, these school board elections, so, and I don't know the exact number, so in general terms, I think there's a little over 200,000 voters in the Katy ISD area within that. Last school board election, I think it was around 15,000 that voted. So just think about that number. Mm-hmm. So we have a lot of conservative voters in that district. They voted for Trump. But they don't show up for these board elections. So who winds up voting? Well, primarily people that are workers in the district, teachers in the district. And so if you have this scare tactic bias against conservative board members, that's tough. That's tough. And so really what we need conservatives who care about what's happening. They care about their children. They care about our community to show up for these school board elections and vote.
Yeah, it's less than 10% of the voting population for especially school board.
Right.
But understand, school board is probably the most important election that in our state. They're the one building up the right policies for our kids to learn it.
Right, and ultimately, the thing about it is. Whoever wins these races, of course, Victor Perez, I support Victor Perez, but we need people to show up. So there's not just a small number of people, a small sliver that's making that decision. Let the community decide. If people need to show up and make that decision, we need people to vote and show up.
You said there were 200,000 people in Katy, correct?
I think what I've been told is the number. There were 200,000 voters in that area.
And how many showed up to vote?
15,000, I think, last election.
And do you know how many employees the Katy ISD school district has?
I think like 100,000.
Oh, okay. Is that the number?
Maybe it's 100. There's the number 100,000 sticks in my head. That might be the number of kids. I can't remember.
It's 16,000 administrators and staff, teachers.
Yeah.
And they're the one voting.
Okay, yeah.
That's pretty much
thinking about the kids.
No. I think it's much bigger than 16,000, I believe, but. But what I'm saying is that, yeah, I mean, they're a voting force in
Yeah.
those school board elections.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you know what? One other thing is, if you say something, do it and mean it and do it. That's what we look at a person, especially elected officials, integrity. You can't fool people. You come out and say, "Hey, look, I'm going to do this," and then after that you change around. The reason I'm saying that, we have a representative in Fort Bend, Gary Gates. In December 14th, he came out and said, "I'm going to support the conservative nominee for Speaker, David Love." And then, what's his name, David Love?
Mm-mm.
Okay. And then, he was the conservative nominee for the Speaker. Then he went a month later in Austin and turned around and voted for the Democrats' choice. Democrats' choice, Dustin Burrows. He abandoned 54 Republican majority and went with the Democrats to elect the Democrats nominee, Dustin Burrows.
Yeah.
So he get a position in his speakership. Say something in here and fooling people and going to Austin and do something different with the Democrats. That's why many times here in the Fort Bend ISDs and Katy ISDs, those representatives have done. So we have to identify who they are.
Well, we have reps in the Houston area that voted for Burrows and didn't vote for the caucus nominee. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a problem to me.
It is a
It's
problem.
big problem. You know, so I don't know Dustin Burrows, obviously. I mean, maybe he's a great,
Dustin
maybe a great
Burrows
guy.
Democrat's choice?
Yes, that's really the point. The point is, good guy or bad guy, whatever he is. He was elected by Democrats.
David Cook. Sorry.
Yeah,
David
Cook was
Okay.
Cook was the caucus nominee.
Sorry.
So if you look at the count, I think numbers wise, it was 50 plus Republicans voted for Cook, and I think it was 30 some odd Republicans, along with I think it's 60 or so Democrats that voted for Burrows. So Burrows is the Democrat choice.
So what is democracy means? Here, conservatives with the majority elect David Cook. Sorry, earlier I misspoke, David Love. David Cook as their nominee for Texas Speaker. So that is what is democracy in the conservative side, joined with the majority. But we have rebels, including Gary Gates, went with the Democrats.
yeah.
And that's a despicable action for anyone's part.
Yeah, again, I'm going to say it again. I mean, I feel like the establishment has their back against the wall. Karl Rove is a non-factor in the state of Texas. The Bush family is a non-factor in the state of Texas. And now it's down to a few certain businessmen who are very wealthy, who are sort of holding the line for the establishment in the state of Texas. And they had this dastardly plan to put Dustin Burrows in at the last minute. They got Gary Gates, guys like him, to switch their vote at the last minute away from David Cook over to Dustin Burrows. And boom, the establishment lives to fight another day. But now, as I understand it, at the Texas State House, the tension amongst the Republican Party is at an all-time high because you have this small contingent of establishment hacks holding the line for the business interests, while the Patriots are there to ensure that when these powers are redistributed at the state level from the federal to the state via President Trump's new initiatives, that a true representation of government happens. Mm-hmm. And so Tony Tinderholt is a state rep, and I find that he is almost always right on the issues. And he took this battle to Dade Fallon initially and now to Dustin Burrows. And he issued sort of a call to challenge in the Texas scorecard. He made a public announcement, a challenge to Dustin Burrows, where he essentially said, look, Dustin Burrows, if you want to unite the Republican Party, it's very simple what you do. You don't allow us to only pass the sort of like non-essential, the fluff issues, which, of course, there's some issues that are not quite as important as other ones, but you allow us to pass the entire Republican agenda. And again, I think that when that happens, it's going to be a real battle. So what I see right now is that Tony Tinderholt is sort of laying down the gauntlet, the challenge for Dustin Burrows. But I don't know. These are amazing times. So Gary Gates. Okay, Gary Gates. The history of Gary Gates, as I understand it, Gary Gates stood with the establishment against Ken Paxton when the establishment wanted to impeach Ken Paxton in a banana republic kangaroo court fashion. Gary Gates stood with them. The grassroots stood up. We defeated that initiative. We defeated that effort. Gary Gates took his medicine, issued an apology to Ken Paxton, made a donation to Ken Paxton's race. We forgave him because that was a major stab in the back because we fought to get that guy in place.
Yeah, I challenged him on the primary last time.
Yeah. And then the second time, what he does is so then he's back in our favor, and then he pulls this stunt where he switches his vote to the establishment candidate, to Dustin Burrows, leaving David Cook in the dust, turning his back on the Patriot movement one more time. And that's how I see it. What is the deal with Gary Gates?
Well, you can never trust that man.
Uh-huh.
Like I said, in December, he came in the Fort Bend Republican Party meeting and say, I'm going to support, and we need to get David Cook over the finish line. We all need to support David Cook. At 30 days later, he went in full-blown, 100%, the first vote, second vote, and third vote for Dustin Burrows and the Democrats. Just completely abandoned the Republican mandates. The whip, which is David Cook is their choice to be the next speaker. He completely abandoned. That means ridiculed the constituents, the voters elected him. No value of Republican value at all. He had this crocodile tears when the Paxton's impeachment he did and gave him a big donation. So Paxton gave him one more chance. I mean, how many chances and choice you can give?
I think it's over.
I'm sure it should. It must.
I was okay with forgiving him that one time. But I mean, obviously, he made to let us know where he stands. How is he being received in his district right now? Are they satisfied with his vote against David Cook and for Dustin Burrows?
Well, conservatives don't. They saw that the betrayal. I mean, no matter who it is, it could be me. If I say one thing and if I don't stand with the majority of the conservatives and go against it, I mean, Democrats are censuring their representatives supported David Cook, one or two of them. Why Republicans can't do it? They should. That's the way that she gave the message. Say, if you go against the majority of conservatives, you no longer represent us. You are out. Censure, ban it, get him out, go and find something else.
Is he the kind of guy? I would think right now that he's out in his district a lot, shaking hands to sort of pacify his actions. Are we seeing him in his district a lot?
That I don't know, but people understand that he is a double-minded man. You cannot trust that person. Gary Gates cannot be trusted because what you thinking on him is not what he is. He already proved, not once, twice. Maybe if you look at a 3 Sensible Act and also the H.R. 4, he voted to shut down the debate on that H.R. 4. They used the nucleus option, which says no debate, no mandate, no changes.
What is H.R. 4?
That's what the House rule to elect the House chairs, the committee chairs.
So that the Democrats could sneak in there.
Democrats get the committee chairs and standing committees, subcommittees chairs and vice chair for pretty much about 30-some different committees. And they have the same equal power as the Republican chairs. Mm-hmm. And given additional $4,000+ for additional office expense.
Yeah, they get extra money.
Extra money.
I saw that, yeah.
You see? You are voting to give extra money for Democrats to put in charge. That's ridiculous. I don't think any of the Republicans will approve that.
Okay, guys, I got one more topic for us to talk. Sure. Okay? So, again, I keep saying these are the most amazing times ever. Possibly. It's just amazing what we're going through. It's incredible. I'm a child at the Christmas morning getting the gifts every day. Okay. But again, I made the argument earlier that I believe President Trump is removing piece by piece the corrupt foundations that were put in by the banker class to ensure that this debt-based currency system with the Federal Reserve Bank, he's removing these foundations, because what they do is they made us drug addicts so that we're dependent on it, right? But if you heal the patient, you don't need the drugs anymore. And he is pulling those piece by piece, the foundations of the Federal Reserve out, so that within so many years, we don't need that group anymore. I think that's such an amazing thing. But then on top of that, he has not said it, but clearly all of his actions indicate that he wants to get rid of the Internal Revenue Service, which means that he wants to get rid of taxes. And sort of how I see it is ultimately what he wants to do is he wants the country to be run on an energy tax and on tariffs. And, the concept of tariffs is basically, tariffs were in place for the first 100 years of our country. No one questioned them. And what they did is they protect American industry and give us the revenues that we need to run. It is a healthy system. It's like a shield of armor on our country, okay? So, again, what the criminal class did was they removed that protection, removed the tariffs. They funded the business colleges across America. You can see every business college has a millionaire, billionaire named after it. And they started teaching us the Hawley-Smoot Act and how bad it is and all of this nonsense, which we're relearning now. They removed the tariffs and they implemented an income tax, which is like a cancer. It never stops. It constantly grows. It constantly eats away at your income more and more and more. And now we're at a point where, they overprint our currency. We're in debt up to our eyeballs. And our American industry is largely gone, and we have poverty everywhere. We have people sleeping under bridges, and you could point in any direction. There's people out there in this cold winter sleeping under bridges. It's an awful situation. I do not blame those people. I blame the American criminal class. And so, with that being said, what it appears to me Trump is doing is he's removing that income tax, and we will see freedom reign once again. But see, I'm trying to find this. I thought he said something about property taxes, because that's just as evil as an income tax. You bought a piece of property and therefore someone else is going to be able to charge you a royalty on something that you earned, on something that you paid for, on your own sweat equity. And I heard I'm trying to find out if he said something. Donald Trump vows to restore homeowners tax break. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to find out, is there something happening to property taxes?
Yeah, what he's talking about, that's one of his campaign promise was what they call SALT, state and local tax. There is a cap for that. It's only, no matter how much tax you pay, like a property tax, you can only account $10,000 as in your income tax. A lot of people pay more than that. So in the other words, you will be paying tax for the tax, the amount you paid. So he's going to eliminate that upper limit, the cap. So
he's going to eliminate an upper limit cap on what again?
State and local property tax. So that means property tax you pay more than $10,000, you can account that as in your income tax as an expense. So that means you don't pay tax.
So you can write it off on your taxes.
Yeah, you don't need to pay taxes for your tax. Make sense?
Yeah.
So that $10,000 cap should be eliminated. That means, say, for instance, you pay $25,000 your state and local property tax, you can account in your state. But you know what? If Americans should be upset with the way the country is going, what we need is a common sense. And what Trump was saying makes really good sense if you understand what he's saying. Reciprocal tariff. A lot of people do not know what the hell that was. But if you take, for instance, an iPhone to some other countries, which I know some of them very well, costs you $1,000 here, you have to pay a tariff $4,000 before you take that goods into that country, because they're adding tariff to that. You import any foreign goods to certain countries, you pay that tariff. Americans should pay that. That's why Trump is imposing that back to them. 25, 30, 50%. Some other countries charge. A lot of people do not know that.
You know what else? the reason that you see cruise ships and they're always waving the flag of some far off, Canary Island or something like that, some other country that's that's just a little speck of dot on the globe, is because they're getting a tax haven. And when they come to our country, cruise ships don't have to pay any sort of taxes. So same thing with all, as I understand it, all shipping industries like that. But yeah, it's truly amazing. Any comments on anything we've said so far?
I think you hit the nail on the head. As far as the thing that you said that struck me the most was tax is a cancer. It is a cancer, and it grows. And I think that's the beauty of what's going on with Donald Trump right now. He has this long history. He went through foreclosures. He lost businesses. He rose and he went up and down in his career. So he's been through so much. So I think he's the perfect man to go basically rattle the cages. Withdrawing taxes, reducing taxes, looking towards tariffs, appointing Doge to go, get rid of waste. These are wonderful times. So we're very blessed right now. And is he going to get rid of the IRS? I don't know. I know you're hopeful. I'm hopeful. We'll see. Who knows? But I think just the fact that he's willing to say it out loud. And we haven't had anybody that's been willing to say it out loud. I think that's the wonderful time that we're in right now.
Well, we're on. Go ahead. We're going to say Dan.
I agree with what James said. You know what? One other thing is the leadership that president is showing up. I mean, the liberals are rattled with the Ukraine and Russia war. Believe it or not, who knows? I don't think anyone will expect any good outcome on that. It will continue like Gulf War. Back in the 80s, there was an 80-year war between Iraq and Iran. Yep. And it reached nowhere. They keep fighting for 8+ years. Same thing in Ukraine and Russia. I don't think that neither one going to win over the other. It will continue thousands, millions and millions of. Chris, you probably got a little bit more to your heart on that. What is the urgency right now is to stop that. So what he is doing, he is taking the leadership. That itself is costing America for the last 3 years over $250 billion. That's money come off your pocket and my pocket.
That's right.
That's why the taxes, the income tax, property tax, what we are paying, it goes to overseas. We cannot take care of our schools. Homeless are on the street. There's no help for any of that. We're spending more on our schools, but we're still on the number 40th in Texas, and all on the global side, we are still like somewhere about 30 or 40 in the low side of the grading of the schools, and all that. That's what I said. Americans should be upset the way that the country is led and is going. You need to change around, and what President Trump is doing is exactly that. It's going to upset some people. Like you said, these deep states and the corrupt groups, they would be upset.
Mm-hmm.
I think the $150 billion that America sent to the Ukraine is the reason the war happened. Mm-hmm. I do not think it is we are always told that people, if left to their own devices, we become these savage animals wanting to, cut each other's throats. I do not believe that. I think mankind in general, are kind and loving and family-oriented, and our most precious thing in the world is our children. And nobody wants to put our children in what's the equivalent of a dog pit, a dog fight. It's the most, so I think that when you look back at the early medieval wars, where the worst kind of fighting, where it's one big knife fight, they're coming at each other with shields, with hatchets and swords. Oh my God, can you imagine how horrific that was if you're pushed into one of those battles? And I don't think they wanted to do it either. And I think the same reason they did it was because of war loans. Because the business class, the banker class, the corrupt criminal class was directing man against man, people against people, in order to attain more power over them and to profit at their expense. And I think we're going to discover that with every single thing that we're uncovering. We're in the process of an uncovering phase. And all of these supposed stories of bad guys versus good guys that we were told, where they make out one guy to be this cartoonish criminal depiction and the other guy is Captain America, we're going to find out that truly it may have just been uninformed people going up against each other because we were told to do so.
Yeah, I mean, what I would like to see is the Doge go on to the defense budget
Yeah.
and see what this, because they're getting billions and billions of dollars. Some of these defense contractors get. That's why they love war. Okay, keep making stuff, and they get the contract and making. So that's what
military-industrial complex.
exactly right. So they love wars and conflicts overseas, so they get more contracts. They need to Doge need to go
The
look
thing
at
about
that.
it is, it makes no sense whatsoever for us to continue to pour tax dollars, billions of tax dollars, into a war that's never going to be won by Ukraine. It's just true. Well, I mean, I'm opposed to the war, obviously, and I think Trump has put common sense back on the table. We need to get this thing settled. I mean, too many people are dying. I mean, just the deaths. And for us to just continue to throw money at this problem, it's insanity. It's absolute insanity.
Well, the sad part is that for the last 3 years, Biden could not get them in a room to talk about anything. Okay, anything. What he was doing, bring them together and say, what can we do? This war is not going to end. Nobody's going to win.
Yep.
And how long are we going to support you? He has not done one thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to push back on the whole narrative. Recently, Oliver Stone made a movie. I don't know, you can look it up. It's on the Ukraine war. And essentially his argument is that in 2014, the American embassy led by Victoria Nuland, who is a deep state hack, she is the henchwoman of the American deep state. She is not a good person. And what she did is she commandeered a coup, an orange color revolution in the Ukraine. It was completely instigated. Nothing was organic. They had the fake news press in place because at that time they sort of had a nationalist president, one like President Trump, who was there for peace, order, good livelihoods, wealth, protecting the border, protecting the currencies. And of course that goes against globalist interests. So what they did, they instigated a color revolution. They instigated a number of false flag events to make that man out to be a larger-than-life villain. And they essentially got it to a point where they had criminal gangs that guy couldn't turn a corner without an attack on his life happening. So he left and he moved to Russia. And that allowed the American deep state, the globalist left, whatever you want to call them, to begin commandeering Ukrainian politics. And then they would tell you what the opinion of the Ukrainian people were. And they would distribute all the propaganda media, and they would tell you the truth about things. And that's when the fighting started to happen against Russia, because as I understand it, those same sort of tactics were beginning to start in Putin's Russia, where he would all of a sudden find out that local governor races in his far-off oblasts, an oblast is the equivalent of a state, where all of a sudden color revolutions were happening in his far-off regions.
Yeah.
So I question everything we hear. We're always put on the defense, but we're always pressed to make an opinion here now. No, I reserve my opinion on all foreign affairs. I reserve my opinion on all historical matters, on all historical figures, until we figure this mess out that we're going through, because we are learning one falsehood after another that we were told was the truth, 100% truth, unquestionable truth. And if you question it, you're a bad person. So I believe that war was instigated. I think it was instigated with the purpose of gutting the American taxpayer. That we are all victims to that war.
That's right.
I look forward to these audits.
Yeah, because if you look at it, it's completely depleted.
Are you guys in a hurry, by the way? No? Okay. No. Conversation. The Radio Dabang has been allowing us to go over some time. They've been very generous. The conversations typically get good in the second half hour, second 45 minutes. So if you got the time, we can keep talking.
Sure.
Yeah,
ahead,
I mean, what I was saying that, thank you. What I was saying that it's completely depleted the American ammunitions giving to Ukraine for the last 3 years. They run out of everything. They don't have any stockpiles anymore. That means that more defense contract to build up again, more billions and trillions of dollars, billions of dollars go to these contractors to keep building it. I mean, peace to strength is a very fundamental concept. You must be strong enough, and that creates peace, because people will know that, country will know that it's not good to mess with America. Don't mess with it.
Well, the other thing about that people, those people, the Ukrainian people and the Russian people are the same people. The Ukraine, it's called the Ukraine, just like we call the Florida Everglades, the Florida Everglades. Mm-hmm. The Florida Everglades is not its own people. It's not its own separate country, separate state. It's just a part of Florida, that's referred to in a certain way. The Ukraine was simply called the Ukraine because it was a part of Russia, and they're all the same people is what I'm trying to say. And if you look over the course of history, generally speaking, when you look at the Bolsheviks, I mean, they leveled torture of punishment on all of those people as one. And I think that that they create divisions amongst people in order to begin instigating them against one another. So,
yeah, where is the $100 billion that given to Ukraine? No, nobody can find that.
Even Zelensky's admitted that.
Yeah,
Zelensky's admitted that he doesn't know where all the money went, which is pretty bad. We're talking a lot of money.
And who's responsible for over 1 million soldiers got killed? Their families lost their loved ones, and plus the others, the civil group.
Okay, so right there, $150 billion, and we don't know where $50 billion of it is. We can't find it, right? How many times can we have that conversation? We are hearing that over and over again. Where is this $1 billion? Where is that $1 billion gone? Okay, and so you look at this stuff, then all of this crime that's been put on our people, all of this form of oppression. And so what President Trump creates is he creates something called the Sovereign Wealth Fund. Did you guys hear about this?
I'm not sure, maybe.
Essentially, he created something called the Sovereign Wealth Fund, and his description of it at this point is very much in a draft form. It's not hammered out with specifics. But essentially what it says is that this fund will look specifically to begin enriching the lives of Americans.
That's right.
Okay? I mean, can you imagine that? Our political class for the past 100 years has only wagged their finger at us in a condescending way, and then they've stolen from us. That's what a thief does. And so my question for you is, are we in the process of President Trump reclaiming a lot of these lost funds and returning them to us?
Yep.
Or allowing this economy to heal on its own accord with incredible proportions, with incredible growth? I think we're on the brink of incredible growth, and returning those funds to us. Do you have any thoughts on the Sovereign Wealth Fund?
Well, I mean, look at what they did on Afghanistan for 6, 7 years. They spent almost $2 trillion and came up with what? A very ridiculous picture of people chasing C-17 big fighter jet, military plane. I mean, that is what the outcome is, the end results of $2 trillion and countless lives lost, fought 7 years, and they came up with nothing. $2 trillion. Here's another $250 billion, or maybe $500 billion is lost here and everywhere in the world. Is that the way America should work? I mean, their wealth is losing, but you will see that wealth. You know where that is? In form of debt. Your wealth which is losing, changing, become the debt of you. Okay, now we are 36, and you count it 40 soon. I mean, it is a high time. Not only President Trump on his 4 years, and I'm hoping that we will have another conservative, strong Republican president for the next 80 years. Because you cannot change the course of a big ship like America in 4 years. You can do a lot of legwork, what he is doing now, but the 4 years is going to run out pretty quick. You will need another 4 or 8 more years. Why China is doing the way that they are doing? Because their leaders don't change it every 3 years and 4 years. Consistent. Here is a democracy. Elect someone after Trump to just do what he is doing now.
Well, that goes to James's point that we need local activism more than
Correct.
anything, because if we have 1,000 brush fires for liberty lit across the country, It doesn't matter if the corrupt class gets a corrupt politician in there again, which God forbid it happens. I don't want it to happen, and I don't think it's going to be possible. But our own fate at this point, we're given a second chance at life, and our fate is in our own hands at this point. And we need to ignite the ignition and get these brush fires for liberty lit across the country, from county to county, from towns like Katy, Texas, to Fort Bend County, Texas, to Houston, Texas, so on and so forth. Because you got a great point. We only have 3 years left.
So about the sovereign wealth fund, I don't know the specifics, but the generality is, I mean, it's a different mindset, right? It's not he's not going to Washington to enact more taxes. He's going up there for us. He's trying to restore wealth to us, and it's a business mindset. It's a business mindset. And then also, to your point about local activism, it's really about people at any level just trying to find some time to engage, find some times to understand what's going on, get to know the candidates, whatever race it is, whether it's a school board election or a state election, national election. Don't let somebody tell you how to vote. I don't think anybody. I mean, people need to do a little bit of investigation and understand the candidates themselves. That's important. Invest time. Time.
What? I really want to appreciate you, James and Chris, for what you're doing in the grassroots level. And I've been to your Katy Republican Club, and I saw that firsthand, and making people aware of what is the compelling issues are grassroots. And Chris, you're doing the awesome job on that as well.
I appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
Making them aware that you're going beyond your call of duty. We could be, I was about 5-6 years ago, I was sitting back relaxing and watching footballs and basketballs and any other sports and spending a lot of time and just staying home. When I start seeing that our country is going down to the drain from the county level to the state level and the federal level, I say I can no longer stay back and eat my popcorn and watch football. I say I need to get out. I need to start educating people, making them aware, and do some changes. Bring some change.
The other thing on that is that I've observed over time is you don't have to bite it all off at once.
Nope.
Right? Just get just a little bit. Just dip your toe in the water. Just dip your toe in the water. Sometimes I've seen people try to get too involved, at once, and they just wash out. It overwhelms, and it is overwhelming. If you think of all the topics, we just touched on just a few topics. There's a lot that's out there, and people have to pay their bills. They have things, they have family, they have other things that they're responsible for. But if people can carve out just a little bit of time, that's what you do. And maybe you find that niche, that area, that whatever race it is, whatever political area it is, whatever excites you, you're going to find it. And just give a little bit of time, and it'll grow if you nurture it. That's what people need to do. And that's always my encouragement to folks.
All right, guys, I got one last one for you. I keep saying that. So what I studied is a lot of the European countries after World War I, they sort of rectified themselves. And they did a lot of the things that President Trump is doing, where they built their borders back up. They reduced taxes. They wrote off they had insane amounts of government loans. They just wrote the loans off, said, go away. And what happened is their economies rebounded in epic fashion, more than 100% year-over-year growth. It's insane, these stories. But personally, I feel like over the greater part of our careers, we've been living in a suppressed economy and didn't know it. It's like we are walking through a desert and we have the camel on our back instead of us being on the camel's back. And I feel like, again, man, a sovereign wealth fund, removal of the IRS, tariffs protecting local industry, for every new regulation, remove 10. I think it's going to be an epic boom town in USA. What do you guys think?
I think it can be. I hope so. I will say this. We cannot think that the journey is over. I think, we can't fall into this trap of, we got Trump in, now I can kind of go back to doing what I was doing before. So we're going to have to continue to be engaged, and we can't let the work fall on someone else, right? We can't just expect that Trump's going to be our savior and we can just go watch our sports. That's not how it works.
Well, we got burnt at the state level, right?
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
I thought that war was over and won, considered one in the books for the Patriots, and boom, the establishment shows up and burns us. You know, Gary Gates burns us by putting Justin Burrows in place. But what do you think? What's your opinion on the country, the economy? What's your opinion on the next 3 years?
So there's a lot of talking, and especially I've been closely watching all these different talks for the last 20 years, at least, if it's not more. Always been a patriot, and always had a concern, and I had similar concerns with Trump. And I'm not a smart guy, but I can think. When I start seeing, since I've been here for the last 36 years, and I see it's a massive imports from foreign goods to America. How this country going to survive? How this country going to survive? No manufacturing. We're getting everything from in different countries, come from overseas, and we don't make anything. How you create your wealth? I'm not an economist, so I can't answer it. But now what Trump's saying is exactly that. You are bringing cars from other countries without any tariff, no duties. They call it duty. How are you going to survive? Where Americans get the money from? I mean, just think America is just like a symbol your home. Your budget and say, look, your debt, national debt, is as big as 3 times more than your yearly revenue. 2 times. How are you going to survive? You can't. The country need a different course and a different direction. We have over 20 million unaccounted illegal immigrants in America.
That's a low number.
I know President Trump vowed to get rid of all of the criminals. That's great. They're doing it. It has some fear. Now the border crossing went down from, what is the numbers, 15,000 per day now to...
it's almost nothing.
It's almost nothing.
Yeah.
Okay? There's a fear. That fear should continue that. Like I said earlier, you cannot mess with America in any way. You must have the strength. But what are we going to do with the, say, 15 plus million people unaccounted? We have to start thinking about something. Trump or anyone else need to start thinking about it. They need to be. There must have a decree that everyone should account it, right? And you and we are accounted, because even if I look at your facial expression, we can account who this person is. He lives in there, such as this. We have over almost 20 million people in America. They are unaccounted. What are we going to do?
I can say this, I'm hopeful. I'm extremely, this first month with him in office, outstanding. The cabinet appointments, outstanding. Yeah. I think the future looks very bright. So I'm very hopeful.
Well, guys, that's our time on the show today. I do appreciate you both being here. Dan Mathews, Fort Bend County resident, active in the Fort Bend County Patriot movement. We appreciate everything that you've done over the years.
Thank you, Chris.
James, with Katy Area Conservatives. Appreciate everything you're doing over there in Katy.
Thank you.
And this is Chris Heasley with the Chris Heasley Radio Show. We will be back here same time next week with one more hot topic. Have a great week.
All right. Thanks, Chris.